We'll continue to look at some of what transpired after last Saturday's election and basically the outcome and the announcement of the winners and the losers. So today, the national chairman of the All Progressives Congress, APC, Adams Oshiomhole, has replied the People's Democratic Party presidential candidate in the just concluded 2019 presidential election. Alhaji Atiku Abubakar will allege that some voters in his strongholds in the south and southeast were prevented from voting. Mr. Oshiomhole took out time to reel out some statistics from previous elections indicating the number of votes gained by President Buhari. He dismissed claims by the former vice president that votes were inflated in the northeast, ravaged by insecurity. He says that his party will meet Atiku and the PDP in court and suggests that they might even cross-petition the PDP.
So we hope and we are looking forward to meet Alhaji Atiku Abubakar in court, and the fact will be laid bare. But if I might also dare him, we might also choose to also not cross appeal now, to cross petition, because there were many areas. Because in Adamawa State, he had already lost the election before he did some articulating magic.
Well, you heard the stance of the APC chairman. Don't forget that the PDP held its own word press conference yesterday where the candidate of the party spoke about the grievances in the election. Well, after the first phase comes the second round of elections. The chairman of INEC, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, says INEC should be well prepared for the next election. He's saying to the resident electoral commissioners across the state that they must implement corrections in the March, the 9th governorship and state assembly elections and learn from challenges faced in the February 23rd federal elections. The INEC boss says the preparations and conduct of the March, the 9th elections must be a tremendous improvement over the February to 23rd elections. The INEC chairman made this known while hosted a preparatory summit of resident electoral commissioners at the INEC headquarters in Abuja.
It is important for us to meet and review the experiences of the last election with a view to strengthening our processes towards the successful conduct of the state elections on Saturday, March the 9th. We have gone very far with all the arrangements for the elections. Elections will hold on March the 9th for the election of governors of states as well as members of their state assemblies.
Well, so after all said and done, we have the business of keeping Nigeria together as one. There are procedures to ventilate dissatisfaction, but today we're looking at what could be done to reunite the nation, get the process better after the intense past weeks of politicking and electioneering, which has created a lot of divide across party lines within the nation. Joining me tonight are, well, lawyers, both of them are social commentators, and some of them at some point had held party differences. But Mr. Daniel Bwala is a lawyer. He's a former APC senatorial aspirant. And I have also a law lecturer at the Base University, Dr. Sam Amadi. He was also gunning for office at some point. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming tonight on the program.
Thank you.
It's an interesting time in our history, isn't it?
That's right.
Political development of Nigeria is getting more and more interesting. You did say at some point, I remember interviewing you, and you did say that there is no Nigerian living that can defeat President Buhari. Was that something that you saw at the time?
Yes, especially coming from the northern extraction, because if I qualify, what I said was there is no northern Nigerian. I'm specifically talking about northern because this 2019 election is about candidates from the political party who come from the north. And I say that because I have studied President Buhari, quite frankly, he is more than just a politician. There are people who believe he's not even a politician. He's like a cult figure in the North. The way and manner in which he's being held with high esteem. In fact, I like what New York Times said after the election, that the election of 2019 is more or less like a referendum on honesty. So that is the way the Northern people see him. They see him as someone who is not materialistic, he's not after wealth, he's after the interests of the poor. That is actually his philosophy of life. The Talakawas.
The sensibility.
Exactly.
So he appeals to that.
He appeals. In fact, when
so
he was...
the opposition, Atiku, does not?
No, Atiku clearly represents the bourgeois. He represents the capitalist, what people call the capitalist. Because
is that how he's been seen?
That's how he's been seen in the North. So, and any politician in the North that you bring face to face with President Buhari will be most preferred. But there will come a time when some of this younger generation will find their identity. For now, most of them are misguided. So that was the premise on which I said no living Northerner will be able to defeat President Buhari in 2019. Do
you agree with that, Dr. Amadi?
Well, evidence seems to justify what he's saying. Essentially, Buhari has participated in about 4 elections. Each of those elections, he has got more than 11 million votes. Even those that he lost, 10 to 11 million. So clearly, there are captive followers. So you can say out of that 11 million, it's 9 million of Buhari supporters have been consistently supporting him across different platforms. So he's the only politician today who has a cult following in a real sense of that. The issue then, therefore, is, and coupled with the fact that politics in the North is not as mobile. There's lack of social mobility in the North. So you don't expect, most of those people are not changing ideology, changing position, and changing lifestyle. So when we move from poor to middle class, they kind of take in some middle class values. So those values can conflict with the conservative values they have, and they may change. So I think for some time, he will represent the vote-catching politician in the North. He has a captive at least 9 million votes. Then he can harness 2-3 million or 4 million from other, and that's what we saw in 2015. And what we saw in 2019, actually, is that they not delivered the presidency. If you look at the electoral map, and they delivered it, even though the number of votes, the rate of voting was lower considerably than, for example, Kano, that usually gave us 2.something million, ended up 1.something million. Right. But the Atiku didn't do well. Atiku perhaps arguably underperformed relatively in the North and was competitive in the Southwest and Southeast and South-South. So primarily you can say this, that Buhari is the Lord of the Mano in the North. He now has a challenge of becoming the Lord of the entire Mano.
Perhaps let me come to you, Mr. Buala. At this point in time, the president did say something about uniting everybody. Right. You see that as just a political statement. And if that is not, what must he do as a leader now to unite this country?
Right. But permit me a second to just correct the notion. I did not lose the election. We had a primaries. No, it was the primaries we had. They cancelled it midway. And rather than fixing a date for another primary, the party sent the name of individuals on the ground that the indigents must be factored. So if there was an election, I definitely would have emerged. So that's just a clarification. Now, but for the president, I think what the president said is presidential, that the party members should not use the victory of the party to humiliate the opposition. And then in his general speech, he said we should see it as the victory for all Nigerians. So the whole idea behind it is now that the battle is over, peace and reconciliation should be our national value. We see how we can integrate, because after all is said and done, he's the president of the republic. He's not the president of the party. He's not the president of the voters that voted for him. And when you see more than 9 million people who didn't vote for him, that suggests that there is a large chunk of Nigerians who dislike him. And sometimes...
who disagreed.
I use the disagree, yeah.
Or maybe disagree.
That's the right word. That's the right word.
Ideas or
they disagree.
His style.
Idea, style, philosophy, or even his person, you know. And because, permit me to say this, the media, the social media has been used in Nigeria. When you look around the world, you see that Nigerians use the social media most in a negative form, where we cannot disagree without insulting each other. So it has created a lot of rancor. The role of not just the president, but everyone in government this time going forward is to see how we can integrate everyone, see how we can carry people along. In victory, you can be humble. And then, like somebody rightly suggested, whether the president can look beyond his party and try to see if he can appoint in his cabinet members of the other opposition party in order to give them a sense of feeling or belonging. That won't be a bad idea. But most important...
Do you think that can happen?
It's possible. Second term of every administration is the second term of the person and not the party.
The test of the person is real character.
Real character.
Because he's not seeking for a third term.
He's not seeking for a third term.
But as it stands right now, do you think, can that magic happen? Where perhaps, because we have not heard whether or not Mr. Atiku Abubakar has made a call through to the president who has won the election, unlike what happened in the case of Goodluck Jonathan, who called Muhammadu Buhari. Do you think that the president, sitting president, could reach out to Atiku Abubakar? Can that magic happen?
I will not expect or even advise the president to first reach out to Abubakar, because Abubakar has collection of people working around him. Usually in a situation like that, there will be a third party that will do the communication. Because if the president reaches out, there is a way Abubakar can interpret it, and it becomes a problem. But most importantly, at this time, to be honest, is to look at going forward, governance, good governance, the deliverables of good governance to the Nigerian people. I see that, and let me even predict to you, 50% of what has been held against the president, to the chagrin surprise of Nigerians, you will see changes. For example, one, you will be surprised to see the president rejigging the cabinet. There are individuals that will just go. Two, you will be surprised that in this second half, you will see the president stamping his ground to prosecute members of the party who are corrupt. I'm predicting this, and I want you to hold and then call me to
just like I held you to this one, well, right. We will hold you to that again if it does or does not happen.
And then the third one, I see that the president this second term carrying along technocrats, because to consolidate on what APC started, you cannot use old ideas for a new thing. So this is what I look forward to.
Let's ask Dr. Amadi. The PDP, Goodluck Jonathan, decided not to go to court last time. A senior advocate of Nigeria, Olisa Agbakoba, admitted the idea of Atiku Abubakar and PDP not going to court. Do you see that happen? They said they're not going to court. But what reconciliatory move should be made now?
Okay, first, I think Olisa, by the way, I worked with Olisa first. After Ghana, I worked with Olisa, my boss. Olisa was very strategic in the thinking. He didn't say the elections didn't have flaws to litigate, but he thought that Atiku could perhaps get more in stature by migrating to a statesman and leading a real clampdown in the future between what they call the progressive forces. And also elections, we cannot move into an idea-based politics, where the idea that loses out gets stronger and then contest. So Atiku cannot be a kingmaker of a sort, to lead a national statesman, leading the national democratic movement and a showdown. But realistically, the PDP has already, before the votes were fully collected, have already indicated they're going to court. They rejected the vote. And right now, I think two things will be happening. The lawyers are putting heads together, looking at process and procedure, and of course, dealing with evidence. Secondly, the political calculation. The political strategists will be thinking, like I said, there'll be a backdoor channel to be saying, perhaps the APC will be reaching out. Beyond the rhetoric of the chairman and others, there should be some realistic top guys will be moving around.
Because we need to close now, if there is one thing, just in 30 seconds, if there's one thing that you think that the president should be thinking of doing in his second term, what would that be? Urgent thing.
Three things. One, quickly, communication. He has started changing the language he uses. It's very critical to mobilize. Second is that the president failed in the anti-corruption by not looking at the symbolic of the people he appoints. What Mike Ignatieff told the Canadian Prime Minister who defeated him, said, first thing, your job is to change politics. If you change politics, you change governance. The optics is important. The president has to carefully select people who work with him so that there are people who will communicate the anti-corruption agenda much more than EFCC prosecution. That's the way to go.
Wow.
If you miss that...
Those are great ideas. Perhaps some legal opinions that you have shared for free. Maybe the APC and the presidency are listening to these for the better, for the nation to be better. I must sincerely thank both of you for sharing your thoughts. Statement, you spoke like statesmen indeed. Thanks so much, gentlemen, for coming on the show. Daniel Boala and Dr. Sam Amadi, thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming on. Well, that's our show for tonight. Thank you so much, everyone. We're back with politics today. We'll come back tomorrow, same time. I'm Sean Kimale. Bye-bye.